What is good, everybody? Welcome to Stats and Cohn on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Grant Cohn. Grant, as frustrating and infuriating as the Super Bowl loss was, it was nice to actually get the chance to meet you face-to-face in Las Vegas last week.
Yeah, we kept crossing paths. It was really funny. There's 1,000,001 media people there. Hey, there's Rob. You were working really hard. It's a lot of work, a lot of walking.
Oh my God. It was a 15-minute walk from our hotel room to Radio Row.
Right.
And I must have made that walk 1,000 times during that week. I got my steps in, that's for sure.
I think I sprained my right foot because I have flat feet and I just brought Vans down and I had no arch support. And by the seventh day, my right foot gave up.
Come on, Grant. This is not your first Super Bowl covering the 49ers. I feel like that's a rookie mistake.
I know, but I was like 31 back then, and now I'm going to get almost 40, and my body's like, what are you thinking?
Oh, I did not think I would be laughing 57 seconds into the show today, based on what happened in the Super Bowl, based on what was said after the Super Bowl. We've got a lot to get to and a lot to break down, and we are going to do that. I just want to take one quick second before we do to tell you about our YouTube sponsor, Community Tree Service. We are super excited that they decided to hop on board this year. If you have a yard, they will take care of it for you. Tree trimming, land clearing, hazard tree removal, home fire hardening, debris removal, from the Central Coast up to the Bay Area. So give them a call because estimates are free. 831-763-2391. Email estimating@cts831.com or just go to their website, communitytree.com. You can schedule your appointment. If you mention you're a Niner fan, you heard about them from us, they'll give you $200 off. So go and do that. Take care of your yard. Football season's over now. You have time to do it. Go do it. And you can feel good because Community Tree Service is licensed by the California State License Board. License number 1100816. Let's start with the Brandon Aiyuk stuff, Grant, because that was the news of the day yesterday. The Niners are clearing out their locker, and Brandon Aiyuk gets asked, do you want to be with the 49ers next year? And he says, if it's the right move. And then they say, well, what does the right move look like? And he says, to be a champion. I have said this many times with you, Grant. There are some questions that the answer is yes. And if you say anything other than yes, that means no. When Brandon Aiyuk is asked, do you want to be with the 49ers next season? If he doesn't say yes, that means he's done with them. Do you agree?
I don't think he's done with them. It's business. It's a negotiation. Would he come back to the 49ers at the right price? I would imagine he would. Just what's the price going to be, and does it work for the 49ers? That's all this is. I don't think he's done with them or is something personal. Now, I do think he's upset, as he should be. 6 targets. Three catches. Like, he was way too productive all year, and in that game to be sort of not phased out, but relegated to a second or third factor. So I get where he's coming from. It's an emotional time. He was crying about the loss, so clearly the team means something to him. I've seen Debo Samuel and George Kittle go through emotional times too when they're trying to get their contracts. So I don't hold it against him. Really, Deebo did the same thing. Requested a trade, came back, everyone's best friend now. So Brandon's 25. I understand what he's going through. And we could talk about whether or not you think he's worth the $25 million a year that he's probably going to be able to ask for. That's a good discussion. But I was in the room with him yesterday, and he didn't seem like a diva trying to play games. He seemed like a guy who was sincerely doing the best he could while, grieving. More than anyone else I could see grieving. He was so emotional.
They were, grief is the perfect word. That's what I feel like I'm experiencing. It clearly looked like the 49ers players, as you would expect, were grieving because the dream of the season is dead. This season is dead. It is grief. It is a loss that they have to process. But I combine that. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
Well, and they feel like they still feel like they should have won. They still feel like they were better than the Chiefs. And I think they're having a tough time figuring out why they lost that game. They still believe they're better than the Chiefs, and Brock played well. And the defense played well. So why did they lose? Is it Kyle's fault? And if it is, I think that really shakes your confidence as a team. Like, our head coach blew it again. Everything they said about him is true. Maybe they haven't even figured out what the story is, but it's a tough one.
It is absolutely a tough one, and trust me, I'll get to Kyle Shanahan. Don't you worry about that. But I just want to finish this Aiyuk point.
Yeah, of course.
because John Lynch was asked about it when Lynch and Shanahan spoke yesterday, and John Lynch was asked, is Aiyuk's contract a priority? And Lynch, instead of saying yes, launched into this long answer about, well, you got to prioritize everything, and we've got a quarterback that's going to have to get paid. And like, that tells me, I think at the very least, Grant, I think it's fair to say they're open to moving Aiyuk for the right deal. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And again, this is negotiation. Aiyuk says, I might, be open to going to Vegas. And the Niners are like, well, we might be open to trading you because, yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. But I'm just going to say it. I wouldn't trade Brandon Aiyuk. And maybe I do this every time, but I really feel like he's proven himself. He learned the playbook. He's not a diva. He wants his targets, but he doesn't complain to the media. He blocks. He's really everything you want. And I think he's still getting better. That's the kind of guy. And his game isn't built on physicality like Deebo's. You could see that one was an investment that may not last long. Like a lot of his value is playing running back and breaking tackle. Aiyuk's just a great route runner who can run every freaking route on the route tree at an elite level. Plus he's tough. Plus he blocks. Plus he's fast enough to be a deep threat. I mean, he averaged like what did he average? 17, 18, 19 yards a catch this year. I mean, to me, that's a safe investment.
And he's healthy.
The problem is you already gave money to Deebo, and that's a lot of freaking money to two wide receivers on a team that ranked 32nd in pass attempts this year, I believe.
That's the question. It's not just, I think fans are looking at it in terms of, should we bring Brandon Aiyuk back? Yes or no? But it's not a binary question like that, because every dollar you spend on Aiyuk is a dollar you can't spend on other places of the team.
And you already don't throw him the ball enough. I mean, right. Frankly, if he were on the Chiefs, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he were on the Chiefs, he'd be getting 150 targets a year.
Yeah. And that's honestly, if I were him, that's where I would maybe look to go. Although they don't pay wide receivers. As we saw, they traded Tyreek Hill and won back-to-back Super Bowls.
True.
But if you're telling me the 49ers could get like a first and a fourth for Aiyuk,
you probably could.
I would trade him, because you can use that first round pick wherever it might be. Maybe you have to package it with your own to move up and get an offensive lineman. This draft is full of wide receivers. You can draft another wide receiver. Like, I think that I would have to. I don't think it's just like, oh, we have to have Brandon Aiyuk back. No. And I agree. If you could find a way to trade Debo Samuel over Brandon Aiyuk, I would do that. But it's easier to trade Aiyuk with the contract situation. Debo's contract, it would have to be a post-June 1st thing. Otherwise, you're going to take a massive, massive cap hit. So the whole thing is hairy, but I think people aren't looking at the bigger picture when they think about it.
I don't like it, because to me, this is DeForest Buckner all over again. Aiyuk's done everything right. Mm-hmm. Like you traded up for him in round one, at the end of round one. You got a bargain there. He's better than that draft spot. And like, he improved every single year. He doesn't talk. He does all the little things. Like, what does it say to your team and your culture if you trade that guy? But you kept Deebo, who's like always like a little overweight and isn't really run that hard if he doesn't get the ball and has no interest in blocking. Like, that's the guy you keep? The guy because he's best friends with Kyle? What are we doing? What is the culture here? Aiyuk's the culture. Aiyuk's the tough guy. Like, I mean, to me, he's the guy who shows up every day of training camp and sets the tone along with Christian McCaffrey to practice hard. That's not Deebo. That's not Kittle. Sorry, Kittle. I mean, it used to be Kittle, but he's 30 now. This is the guy who's 25 and ascending. He could be the MVP of your offense next year. I mean, what is McCaffrey's shelf life? They give him the ball a lot. He's a running back. He's going to be 28 years old. Also, it takes a long time to learn Kyle Shanahan's offense. Is a rookie wide receiver really going to be able to do what Aiyuk could do next year? Maybe in a couple years he'd be better, but this is a team that has aspirations right now. Like Brock Purdy's got his last year on his rookie deal coming up. This is still the Niners window. That's why the Niners are favored to win the Super Bowl next year, because of the Brock Purdy fact. So these are all things you got to factor in, and why I really would be in favor of keeping Brandon Aiyuk, even though in a couple years you might be looking at that contract being like, damn, $30 million cap hit for 28 years. Like, yeah, man, I still would do it.
Deebo, I think the allowances get made for Deebo because the allowances always get made for great players. I don't think he gets away with what he does. He can take over football games.
He can.
He took over that Eagles game. absolutely took over that Eagles game.
Yeah.
His best, Debo's best is better than Aiyuk's best. The problem is that Debo's floor is lower than Aiyuk's floor.
I don't even know if I agree with that anymore.
Oh,
though,
I totally agree with it.
But here's the thing with Aiyuk. I know. Here's the thing with Aiyuk, though. He's catching the ball further down the field. So to him, I mean, he would really benefit from a team that had a better offensive line.
Yes.
I mean, on this team where the ball kind of has to come out quickly, especially against certain opponents like Philly, then yeah, a guy like Deebo is more valuable in that matchup. But that's sort of because he masks certain weaknesses the 49ers choose to have. And isn't it really funny that now everyone's had the epiphany, like, you know what? This team needs to invest in the offensive line. Like, yeah, man. Isn't that what we said during the draft last year when the Niners took no offensive linemen and people were like, it doesn't matter? It does.
Clearly,
it does.
The offensive line, kind of important.
Oh.
I'm just saying. So we will definitely keep an eye on the Brandon Aiyuk situation 100%. Let's get to some of the super chats because we've got a lot of them.
Before we go on, what do you think ends up with that Brandon Aiyuk situation? I guess that's the final question. We said what we think should happen, but like, what do you think's going to happen? Is he going to be the next DeForest Buckner? He might be.
I think the Niners would prefer to keep him.
Sure.
But I think that if a team really wanted him, you could get him. I think they'd have to be I think there's a 2 draft pick deal where one of them is a first round pick, and I think the Niners do it.
Can I give you a conspiracy theory real quick? And I bet you Brandon Aiyuk is thinking about this right
now.
Brandon, conspiracy theory. How come you only got 6 targets in the Super Bowl? Why?
Why did
Deebo get all those targets? Why?
Because they already paid Deebo and
yes!
they wanted to pay. Oh.
Yes. Business decisions in the Super Bowl. Hey, maybe that's not true, but if I were Brandon, I'd be wondering, it's like, how did I play that well all year to get relatively snubbed in the Super Bowl? Because from his perspective, he feels snubbed. I don't know.
Well, the Brandon Aiyuk only had 3 catches in every single playoff game this year. So it wasn't just the Super Bowl.
That's not his fault. I'd be mad too. He's really good.
Yeah, I get
How
why
many
he's
wide
mad.
receivers are legitimately better than Brandon Aiyuk? How many?
I mean, off the top of my head, geez, I don't know. I haven't really figured this
4 or
out.
5? Maybe
Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase is definitely better than him. Devontae Adams is definitely better than him.
I take Aiyuk at this point. Devontae's getting a little old.
CeeDee Lamb, I would put is better than him.
Debatable.
Mike Evans is better than him.
No, not for me. Too old.
I mean, Mike
but
Evans,
I'm a Brandon Aiyuk fan. What can I say? I'm getting my Brandon Aiyuk signed jersey coming.
I'm not trying to crap on Brandon Aiyuk here. You
are.
You asked me to name people, so I'm
that's fair.
People.
That's fair. We're arguing. That's cool.
Yeah, the Aiyuk thing is definitely going to be something to monitor. And I think that kind of like Deebo, I think the Niners really didn't want to trade Deebo, but they would have if they got blown away. I think they want to trade Aiyuk. I think they're more open to trading Aiyuk, and I think the deal wouldn't have to be as good to get them to do it.
Who was a more complete wide receiver in the NFL than Brandon Aiyuk? He does everything well. He runs every route. He is a threat after the catch. He blocks. He goes over the middle. He's fat. I mean, like, I don't know, man. I don't feel comfortable trading a player like this, especially on a team that I feel hasn't taken full advantage of his skill sets. Deebo has been. They take full advantage of Deebo. Kyle's dreaming of new ways to use him. Could you just spend one season giving Brandon Aiyuk the targets he's clearly earned before you trade him? To me, it kind of reminds me of like to go to another sport. You know, the Thunder trading James Harden to the Rockets 10 years ago when he was their 6th man, and the Rockets are like, okay, well, we're just going to give him 30 shots a night. Thank you very much. You guys weren't really using this guy. We're going to use him. Kind of like that.
And I think it also depends on like what you get back for him, right? Like the Vikings traded Stephon Diggs. They got Justin Jefferson. Like
That's
if
true.
you can do that, of course, everyone would say trade Brandon Aiyuk, right? Like, so, we don't know the second part.
If they're incredibly convicted about a wide receiver in the draft, then sure. But I mean, like, that doesn't always work out. They tried this with DeForest Buckner. They tried it. They traded him. They got the 1st round pick. They took another player at that position, and it just didn't work out because it's hard to replace. DeForest Buckner did everything right. He was good at everything. He improved every year. He was a leader on the team. Man, is that not Brandon Aiyuk? I think he could be a captain if you made him one. I think he has that mentality.
Yeah, I think so too. So definitely something to monitor for sure. Let's get to a couple super chats. Brother Bob, we always appreciate you, Brother Bob. YouTube channel member says, will Kyle ever win a Super Bowl in San Francisco? Be honest, no homer.
Homer.
I think that he can win a Super Bowl, but I think it's going to take a very specific set of circumstances and game script. It's going to be a game. It's going to have to take a game where he doesn't have to make any fourth down decisions. It's going to have to be a game where he doesn't have to manage the clock at the end of the first half. It's going to have to be a game where the Niners get up big early and never give it back, basically.
I'm going to say no. I feel like he had the best team in the league this year and the better team in the Super Bowl, and he found a way to lose. I don't know what the deal is, but I don't really have confidence that he's going to win a Super Bowl here. Maybe he'll win a Super Bowl one day, but it seems like he's his worst enemy. I don't know. And like for him, I think we've said this for years, like he'll have to grow. He'll have to change. And then January comes around and people are like, boom, he's changed. He's grown. And it feels like, I even feel like, man, I'm Kyle. I really got to give it to you. And then the season ends the same way every time. It's like, no. And then his post-season press conference happened. It's the same, not taking accountability for anything. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's Kyle. That's the same Kyle that I bet against all offseason. I don't know.
Kyle,
I haven't seen growth from Kyle yet. We all want to see it. But look at him at that press conference yesterday and tell me that's the same Kyle Shanahan that's always been here, for better or for worse.
That's why I say it's going to take a specific game script for him to win, because he's not changing. He's not adapting.
Yeah, he needs like a non-Hall of Fame quarterback on the other side, because that's some guy who's going to make more mistakes than him. Sorry.
Or just not the GOAT, right? The two quarterbacks he's lost to in the Super Bowl are Brady and Mahomes.
It's the Super Bowl, though. Like, what are you expecting? You're probably going to get an MVP type, quarterback around there. Maybe he'll get next year. Maybe he'll get lucky and face.
That's the problem in the AFC. They're all good.
It's like it's all tough. Yeah, also, it's going to be the Chiefs next year. Let's not mess around. This is obvious.
Gammon Brown. We lost our assistant head coach, run and pass game coordinators. Is Brian Greasy up for promotion to offensive coordinator / assistant head coach? Kyle wants a young DC to groom. First of all, the Anthony Lynn loss, he went to the Commanders, if anybody doesn't know. That happened today with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters. Anthony Lynn is like the most easiest loss for them to sustain. They have Bobby Turner. He's the real running back coach. He came back earlier than they thought from a medical issue, I think, because they weren't happy with Anthony Lynn.
Yeah,
that's a nothing loss to me.
Nothing. No disrespect to Anthony Lynn, but I don't think he really had a role here. Like you said, they brought him in because they lost. That was so weird. So they lose Bobby Turner. They bring in Anthony Lynn, and to entice him to come, they make him assistant head coach, alienate John Embry in the process. He goes to Miami because he was the assistant head coach and the tight end coach. Then Anthony Lynn, I don't know if they're not happy or it doesn't work out. They bring Bobby Turner back within weeks, and now Anthony Lynn's gone. It's like, okay.
And Bobby Turner's back, and they're fine.
And now you need an assistant head coach. The run game coordinator is Forster. The pass game coordinator was Kubiak. You need a pass game coordinator, an offensive coordinator. I think they need an offensive coordinator. Why not? And an assistant head coach. I could do all three, but I would settle for one. Rob could do the other.
I could be the offensive coordinator because I don't have to call any damn plays. That's the thing. It's hard to get someone to do that job because you're not going to ever call a play.
I like that.
It's very frustrating. You mentioned Gammon mentions defensive coordinator. That's another answer, Grant, where they were incredibly murky. And I think part of the problem is, of course, because Matt Mayoko did not phrase the question properly. He gave Kyle an out in the question. He said, well, Steve Wilks at this point in his career. Just ask Kyle Shanahan, is Steve Wilks going to be back? And at first he didn't, and Shanahan didn't say yes. And then later, Eric Branch tried to clarify and say, is Wilks going to be back? And Kyle answered, but he referenced Mayoko's earlier question and said, well, I haven't talked to anybody yet, so I expect all our coaches to be back. If it's me and I'm Steve Wilks, I'm not buying any green bananas because I don't think he is going to be back.
Also, the way he phrased it was interesting. Like, he wouldn't just come out. It was a phrasing thing. So I wouldn't expect – I haven't taught – he's kind of making it seem like Wilks could act. They're not going to embarrass Wilks more than they already have.
Right? They're not?
More than they already have. What they could do is make it seem like this is a mutual thing.
Right.
Like, we love Wilks, man. Wilks is great. But we were sort of asking him to be someone he's not and do something he doesn't. And it wasn't fair. And so out of deep respect to Steve Wilks, we sort of granted him. This is remember Kyle Shanahan did this in Cleveland. He didn't want to coach there anymore. He was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland, and he like wrote a letter to the owner with like 45 reasons why he should let him out of his contract. The owner was like, all right, man, if you want to coach, you're fine. They could do that with Wilks. Like, he just doesn't want to coach here anymore. He doesn't want to.
I think they're going to say at this point in his career, he wants to be a head coach. I think it's such a weird situation, Grant.
It was a bad fit, to be honest.
On one hand, I could say they were successful. They had one of the best defenses statistically in the league this year, and they allowed 2 touchdowns to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and 1 came in overtime.
He's a damn good coach.
But
did the players ever buy into him? No.
I think there's an issue of respect there, I think.
Yeah, like I bought in, but I don't play for him. And I don't understand what's going on there.
Look at the difference. This defense came out in the early part of this Super Bowl, Grant, and they looked awesome. They were flying around. They looked like the defense they were against the Cowboys and against the Eagles. But they had motivational issues in the NFC Championship game. And to me, that speaks to, I think the players thought this is our defense, not your defense. I think there was I don't know if it was a respect issue with Steve Wilks, but something wasn't right there. And to me, I don't know that you can bring him back next year because I think you would have the same issues.
I agree. It was not his defense. They undercut him at every turn. Hey, early in the season, he was bringing pressure. Nick Bosa at a post-game press conference like, yeah, we're a 4-man rush kind of team. He tried to bring a blitz on cover 0 on the last drive of the Super Bowl, and Kyle Shanahan called a timeout to overrule him. It's like, you don't let me call what I want. You don't let me stand where I want. Get what you want, man. What do you want? Do you want Mike Vrabel? Is that what you want? Go get Mike Vrabel then. It's not fair to Steve Wilks to keep asking him to be so. It's like when you're in a relationship with someone, you keep trying to change that person. It's like, people don't change, really. You either love that person for all their weirdness or you don't. And let them go. Stop trying to change them. They're not going to change.
I have an idea for defensive coordinator, and people are going to hate it and they're going to think I'm crazy, but I don't know. I think that they should consider Rex Ryan. I really do. And part of the reason I think they should consider Rex Ryan is because this team needs a wake-up call. They need a personality in there that I think, look at Saleh and D'Amico, right? They're fiery type guys. That's who Rex Ryan is. Rex knows defense. You could rip Rex for a lot of stuff. He knows defense. He won a ring as a defensive coordinator with one of the best defensive teams of all time with the Baltimore Ravens. Like, I think he won a ring anyway. I got to double check that, but he clearly knows defense.
He's been coach since 2016, dude. No, absolutely not. No. What about Vrabel?
No, Vrabel's a terrible defensive coordinator. He's not good. Okay. I think, he was a Super Bowl champion.
Okay, let's get crazy then. Let's get crazy then. How about just fire Kyle and hire Bill Belichick and win the Super Bowl next year? Yeah, he's in his 70s and you don't have a future, but you'll be like, you know what? We're going to give the best roster in the league to the greatest coach of all time, or one of them, and just say, we're going to go for this Super Bowl now. How about that?
I would not support that.
Why?
Because then where do you go after Bill Belichick?
Then where do you go after winning the Super Bowl? I don't know. That's like first world problem. Figure it out.
And it's not guaranteed that you win the Super Bowl.
No, but you have better chances than you do with, Boy Genius.
I would love to see if Kyle would just take a flyer and say, hey, Bill, you wanted to coordinate the defense for a year? You're not getting a head coaching job.
I want to be your head coach. Well, yeah, I'll be the coordinator, but then when they fire you, I'm going to take your job.
Okay.
And I'm going to be in bed the whole time being like, fire him. I can do better.
I think it's worth a phone call anyway.
Hell yeah.
Why not?
Have to make that phone call.
Yeah. What have you got to lose? But I don't think if you had to put an amount of money that mattered to you on whether Steve Wilks is the DC next year, are you putting for or against?
Oh, against. I'm not.
Yeah.
That sounded bad. That sounded really bad. It sounds like if they can find another option, he's gone. And the other option might be in-house. Like they could talk to the players on these exit interviews, and Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, like all of them would be like, you know what, we would just like Daniel Bullocks. He's been here since 2017. I don't understand why he didn't promote him to begin with. We all like him. I don't know.
That's not the way you run a team, though.
But that's not the way they do it.
Well, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Moise says, Grant, what's the offseason show schedule look like?
Pretty much the same, but I might do a 2 instead of 1 on Thursday and Friday. So we'll see.
Yaz says BA is special. He's a true number one wide receiver.
Yeah.
Chris says they should trade Deebo, but they'll move BA. BA isn't one of Kyle's guys. I think he'll end up in Houston, Indy, or the Jets.
Yeah, let's talk about trading Deebo now. So trading Deebo is more complicated. Trading Aiyuk is easy because he's not making a lot of money and it wouldn't hurt you financially. Trading Deebo is tough. Trading Deebo this year would come with a $21 million dead cap hit. More than that. A little bit more than $21 million if you trade him. And that just feels like a non-starter. Like I'm not spending $21 million for him to play for another team. Yeah, it's complicated though, because you could get something. Deebo's worth $1 million, worth a first-round pick, I would think. And if you don't trade him this year, look what you got to pay him next year. So you got to pay him 28.6 this year, then 24.2 next year. So let's say you traded him next year. So you still have a $15 million dead cap charge. So over the next 2 years, you're still committing like more than $40 million to him. And if you trade him next year, you get less in return. So I would trade him now. I would take the dead cap hit, not cut. If you go to the little drop-down menu and click on trade pre-June 1, that'll show what the dead cap hit would be if they trade him.
21.7.
Yeah, that's a whole lot. But get him off the books now, because it would be 15 the year after, and the return in the trade would be much less. Get that first round pick. I would do it. I'd take the hit.
Here's the other part of this. If you trade Deebo after June 1st, the cap hit is only $6.6 million this year. Now,
yeah, but isn't it spread out to the future? I don't exactly know how that works, but okay, it's tough to trade a guy after June 1 because what are you getting in return, right? Not a draft pick. Yeah.
If you get a draft pick, you got to wait a whole year.
Right. And you're not going to get a quarterback because you want him in an OT. So it's such a tough one, trading after June 1. Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it's complicated. I think if all things were equal, I think Deebo would be more likely to get traded than Brandon Aiyuk.
But it's not all things equal for sure.
Exactly.
So it's like, how motivated are you to get rid of him? If you should really want to keep him with this financial outlook, but he gets hurt every year. He got hurt in the Super Bowl. Weight's an issue for him. He can't beat man-to-man coverage. He doesn't really play running back anymore. Like, I'm very concerned that his value is going to go down quickly. And if anyone thinks he's still elite, I'd be tempted to move off of him now. Now, like the Eagles did with Carson Wentz. Everyone thought it was crazy. It's like, no. You don't understand. We know this is time. It's time.
I don't think Deebo is going to age well at all.
I don't think he is aging.
He's so physical. Yaz Williams, if they trade him, Aiyuk or Deebo, I assume either one, do they go for Brendan Rice? I think, there is a part of me that wants the Niners to take Luke McCaffrey and Brendan Rice in the draft. Like, let's just keep the family together.
Right? Yeah. The family business.
Yeah. Khalid Rice, speaking of Rices, I'm a family member of an NFL star, and when the family's talking, it's legit.
Jerry Rice?
Is he willing to take less money? I don't think so. Jennings can step up. Is this family member of an NFL star?
Don't do that.
Is that Rice from the Chiefs?
They're going to trade Brandon Aiyuk. And it's going to be the biggest mistake they've made since they traded Buckner. Don't do it.
Jennings is he's a fine player, but he's not Brandon Aiyuk.
Jennings is a fine player.
Yeah,
he's a really good player.
And I actually like being around him a little more last week at the media sessions and stuff. His personality is fantastic. Yeah. Like, I love that dude. Just talking to him.
High energy for sure. Yeah.
But he's skill-wise, no disrespect to Juwan Jennings, who was on track to be the Super Bowl MVP. He's not at that level. Adam Gardner says, please tell me your opinion on this. Trade Deebo for O-line, use early draft pick on O-line, then draft Luke McCaffrey and Brendan Rice in the second and third round. Luke is a perfect Deebo replacement.
Look, I haven't really started watching college football stuff yet, so forgive me on that. But the idea of trading Deebo for O-line is cool. You don't need to have this gadget player in your offense. You don't. I'm sorry. That, to me, he was a crutch for Jimmy Garoppolo. You have an elite number one wide receiver, the best tight end in football, the best running back in football, and Juwan Jennings, who to me is a starting caliber wide receiver, a starting caliber number 2 wide receiver. That's good. You got it. You could definitely trade Debo Samuel for a really good right tackle, or a pick that becomes a really good right tackle, or a center, or whatever. But that's a great move. I mean, that's essentially what the Chiefs did with Tyreek Hill. Look, great player, gadget player. We're going to let someone else pay you, and we're going to invest in our offensive line. I think that'd be a money move for the Niners. You have great weapons.
And I have brought that up with people, and the response, and I understand it, is when you have the greatest quarterback playing today, you can afford to do that. And that is a fair That's a fair
But
response.
I thought Brock was the greatest quarterback playing today. He's top 3.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. You didn't even
I'm
get
just saying.
you didn't even get God mode Mahomes on
He's
Sunday.
not the threat he was 2 years ago. It's clear. He has a few good games a year. He had a few good games in 2022. He had a few good games in 2023, dominant games. But it's fewer and far between. And when they asked him to step up in the Super Bowl, he didn't have that gear. Plain and simple. Trent McDuffie, shut him down. Shut him down. That's always going to be remembered on the big stage. Sorry. It was going to be 29 next year. Yeah. It's time.
11 targets, 3 catches.
No, that's not good.
And he's had the same weakness his whole career. He cannot get open against man coverage. It's true.
You can't spend $28.6 million in cap money on a wide receiver who can't beat man-to-man coverage and doesn't play running back. That's too much. But then, if that's what everyone knows about Deebo, there might not even be a trade market for him. So maybe this is even an issue.
Kenny 757. I'm PO'd. It's taken me 2 days to even watch one of these videos in its entirety. I'm sick of the incompetence. Change is needed. We can't become the definition of insanity. Call Bill. I just want a Super Bowl win.
Doesn't it? I understand why people don't want to go that route. Bill Belichick isn't exactly a guaranteed Super Bowl, and he's not fun to root for. He cheated, allegedly.
But he cheated. He definitely cheated.
Yeah. But this feels very much like 2020. You lose a Super Bowl. It's emotional, but you don't want to make big changes, and you feel like the core is good and there's a future. And so Tom Brady's available, and it's like, no, Jimmy's better than Tom Brady. Tom's washed. Jimmy's blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, don't overthink it. You had that opportunity. Now it seems very similar. Okay, Belichick is just waiting there, and you're going to talk yourself into giving Kyle Shanahan another chance when he just blew one. I don't know. I think people who are less emotionally attached to the team might see it as more of a no-brainer. Like, yeah, just go get Belichick and get the ring. But I think Niner fans are so invested in the Kyle Shanahan story that they want to see it through. They're mad at him right now. They're mad at him.
I'm mad at him.
They're mad at him, but they don't hate him. They love him. And that's why they're so mad. But they'll come back. They'll come back.
I am mad at him because he is the reason that the 49ers have owned the NFC for the past 5 years. And he's the reason they've gotten to everything that they've gotten to. But he's also the reason they don't have a Super Bowl championship. It's both. And that's what's so frustrating about it.
It is. That's well put. Well put. But if that's the case and he's built this up and he's going to be the reason they never get across the finish line, then at a certain point, you got to say, Kyle, thank you so much for everything you've done for us. You are responsible for this juggernaut that you've built. Now we got to take it from here. Thank you so much. And I know that's not now. Well, I'm not saying it's not now, but maybe it's not now. But at a certain point, if that's who he is, you got to make the hard decision. Jed, I know you like him, but you made the hard decision with Harbaugh. And I thought it wasn't because you didn't dislike
they made
him.
the decision with Harbaugh because he hated his guts.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
You can't be making personal decisions. These are business decisions, Jed.
Well, but here's the thing. From a business perspective, Kyle's great for business. They make the playoffs every year. They go deep in the playoffs every year. They get home playoff game. Like, Kyle's great for business if you're just looking at it from that perspective. I think that's why Jed likes Kyle.
As an owner, you're looking at it from the perspective of winning a Super Bowl. And if you feel there's a coach available who gives the team a better chance to win a Super Bowl, you owe it to the organization to hire that guy. So I'm not saying Bill Belichick definitely gives the Niners a better chance to win a Super Bowl, but you got to investigate and do the math, talk to someone, do the analytics, because it's debatable. Guys won a lot, and he's done it with teams that aren't as dominant as this one.
Yeah, it would be, or in terms of the overall roster, it would definitely be one of the better teams Belichick has had.
Yeah.
The other thing is they just announced a contract extension with Kyle. I think it was like a 6-year extension, right?
Yeah.
Last year.
He's not going anywhere.
You're not going to. What's that?
How much money he's getting per year?
Right. I mean, because you're not going to cut Kyle, pay him not to coach, and then have to pay Belichick.
It's never going to happen.
Right.
It's never going to happen.
Chris Tellerico's Debo's best is a top 5 running back. BA's best is a top 5 wide receiver. BA's floor is the 4th target, getting 1,300 yards. You need a top 5 wide receiver. They already have a top 5 running back.
I don't even think they tried to use Deebo as a running back in the Super Bowl. He got nowhere.
I think the novelty of that play is
over. Yeah,
it's over. Generic name. Thank you. I like that. Says Debo's floor is lower, but he's also at his floor more often than Aiyuk. There's no debate to be had here. This is the thing. There are too many games where Deebo does nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like nothing on 11 targets. It can't happen.
Right.
It can't happen. He's had every opportunity, probably more than he's deserved the last few years. It's time to let that go and start giving guys like Brandon Aiyuk the opportunities that they deserved.
Moises is back. McLeod made a business decision not jumping on that punt. Looked like he could have incurred a serious injury if he had agreed or no. Here's my problem with McLeod. He absolutely should not have tried to pick that ball up and run with it. He needs to fall on it. And for him to say, well, I don't regret it. You got to take risks, and I'm a playmaker. Dude, you haven't made any plays with the 49ers. All your biggest plays are fumbles, Ray. Fall on the goddamn football. But Ray McLeod needed to be a big name in the Super. Just fall on the goddamn ball. Fall on the ball, Ray. Like, he's got to be off the team. Off the team next year.
Yeah, I agree. Because that loss is so painful. I feel like just looking at him is like PTSD. Like, oh, I'm back. Oh, no, I'm in Vegas. No! Yeah, sorry. I gotta go.
No.
Also, John Feliciano gotta go.
That was a whole thing.
Got to go.
So Feliciano,
I want to say one thing real quick, because as the offseason goes on, the few people who made the biggest mistakes are going to just take so much heat. And one of the guys who made the biggest mistake in the game was Spencer Burford. He admittedly missed his assignment on the final offensive play. Okay. Big mistake. And he'll have to live with that, and the team will have to live with that. Also want to say that he's a 23-year-old guard who started way younger than Aaron Banks. He's got a bright future. He just needs to get a little bit stronger. But that's not what I want to mention. This is like the most painful loss of these players' careers. And not every player handled it that well or could really talk to the media about what happened. Kyle certainly didn't. I mean, he didn't take any responsibility. Yesterday in the locker room, all the stars came out and gave their little spiel about how they feel and what they're going to do, because that's their job and they're paid to do it. Spencer Burford comes out. No one asked. No one's like, we need to talk to Spencer. Spencer Burford just walks out in the middle of the locker room and says, what do you guys need? I'm here to talk. And there's a whole group around him, and he goes through it. I should have had him. I was responsible for the B gap. It was my fault. Like, do you understand how hard that is? That's the hardest thing an athlete has to do with the media. And he didn't have to. If he hadn't, no one would have noticed or said a damn word about it. He did it anyway. What that really shows, it doesn't show that he's going to be a great football player, but he shows that he has deep down maturity and character and strength that we would all aspire to have. So you learn about people in losses, not so much in wins. Wow. Learned about Spencer Burford. Learned about George Kittle. Immediately after the game, he sat out there and gave the best explanation of what happened. He was phenomenal, as opposed to, again, his head coach, which makes me feel like, look at how much that young man has grown since he was drafted at 23, George Kittle. Look at how much this coach hasn't. Anyway, I just went on a tangent. Spencer Burford, extremely impressive. You don't know much about these offensive linemen. They're very nameless and voiceless, but man, he showed his character after this game.
And he knows what he's going to get when he admits, I ignored the scheme and I went rogue. Like when he says I played on instinct and I should have stuck to the scheme, he knows what's about to come down on top of him, because you've got a whole fan base that's infuriated with the team and looking for someone to point their anger. He knows
it pointed at me, because everyone was pointing at Colton McKivitz. And real quick, not to make excuses for Spencer Burford, I don't think he was like dropping back thinking, screw what the coaches told me to do. I know better. I think things happen fast. There was a blitz. He saw a guy in front of him. He blocked him. He made a mistake. But I don't think he was like out there going rogue, as you pointed. That makes it seem like he sort of made a conscious decision that he knew better. I think he reacted and made the wrong reaction. And it is, again, in his defense, he hasn't been playing much. And
there are times in a football game where the scheme is not necessarily the right thing to do. Sometimes it's like, hey, yeah, the scheme says this, but this is the circumstances that I'm in, and so I'm going to adjust. It's just, I think, to his
credit, he didn't make that excuse. He just said, I messed up. I did the wrong thing.
It's more a credit to Steve Spagnuolo cracking the code and exposing the flaws in Kyle Shanahan's protection, because they had 10 free rushers in the game.
Thank you. It's easy to point the finger at Spencer Burford. You should have picked up this one guy on this one play. Yeah, but that was a constant issue for the entire offensive line, the entire game. And even if Spencer Burford did pick up the right guy, there would have been another free rusher.
Right.
It wouldn't have been Chris Jones, but it would have been the linebacker. Like, they were in a bad spot. So it's easy to point the finger at the 23-year-old backup guard who comes in filling in for John Feliciano, who can't keep his mouth shut. But really, there was probably a design flaw with this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, they got outcoached.
But completely agree. The character that Spencer Burford showed is fantastic, and that he should be proud of that.
Because we always knock players when they don't show up, or we nitpick them when they don't say, like, that was the model. Dude is 23. Wow.
Crazy Rod 16. When I was a teenager, I grew up watching the lemonade stand. It was great. It tasted so good with 5 Super Bowls. The lemon management would have fired Kyle Shanahan already. Oh, the lemonade stand. Right. I see the reference that he's making. That's the Parag.
You can't say stuff like that.
The Parag Marate reference.
The other thing that will always haunt Jed is that when he said 2 weeks ago, champions act like champions before they're champions. Dude, you wouldn't know what a champion acted like? Wow. Don't say that stuff because you may never be one. And that's just the punchline.
Yeah, especially, champions act like champions.
Make yourself the punchline. Just please.
Generic name. We complain about Chase, but Deebo shows up like 10 plays a year.
Yo, that Chase thing really didn't work out. That was so interesting, the arc on that Chase thing. It was like, Washington doesn't know what they're doing. Trash franchise. You put Chase here with Nick Bosa and Chris Kasarik. It's going to change his career. It's going to change our trajectory. It's like, no, we see exactly why Washington didn't want him. We don't want him. We don't want him. It's like, goodbye, Chase.
Well, don't forget.
Got to go.
He got in the first game, he got the sack where he and Bosa met at the quarterback, and you're like, yes, it is going to work. And then he disappeared, and then lo and behold,
allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Chase, and I don't play that hard.
In the Super Bowl, he had a fantastic sack, blew by the offensive lineman,
and then put it into cruise control the rest of the game, man. Sorry.
Connor N. Our front office is not committed to being a consistent contender if we keep Deebo and let Aiyuk walk. He's a top 5 wide receiver and has great chemistry with Purdy. I mean, you have been a consistent contender the past half decade. So I would say that the front office is committed to that.
I know. I sort of agree with Connor's sentiment, though. I guess what I was saying is, like, this guy's done everything right. He's a big part of your culture. He's a team leader. He's one of your best players. Don't make the Buckner mistake. And I know some people feel like that wasn't even that big of a mistake. Didn't cost him. Armstead's great, too.
Well, it cost him because you paid Hargrave in free agency. That's the thing. When you miss in the draft, you pay in free agency. Yeah. They missed with Reuben Foster. Quan Alexander was a thing. They missed with.
So if they trade Aiyuk for a draft pick and they miss with that pick, then they'll be spending a lot of money on some other wide receiver who isn't Brandon Aiyuk in a few years.
Max Morlock, YouTube channel member, says, please get an OC. John Lynch, do something. Yeah, I don't. We'll see.
I like the idea of getting an OC. Why not, man? Delegate more, Kyle. You've been a head coach for a long time. Delegate more. Andy
Work
Reid
on your game management, for the love of God. It's Nick FR says, this loss is on QC for not making sure Kyle wouldn't blow another lead. Psych, love the show, guys. Grant, please keep Kyle's feet to the fire next year. He did not like your question, Grant, when you said assess your offense, and he just said every play's different. I did not like your question.
I thought that was like the tamest question one could ask.
Yep.
And he pleaded the fifth to it. Now, he's going to say he didn't plead the fifth. He's just going to say, I don't like Grant, and I didn't want to answer his question. But it's not just my question. It's everyone's question. George Kittle said the offense sputtered. Everyone says Brock Purdy played great. So what happened, man? Are you going to blame Christian McCaffrey? Like, it was your fault. So what did you – I could have said, hey, man, how would you assess your performance as a play caller? But what was up with the offense? Each play was different. Yikes.
You scored 22 points, dude.
What happened?
You gained a yard in the third quarter, basically.
What the hell happened?
It's a fair – and that question is an open-ended question. It's not – it's all –
Have they answered it? They haven't answered what happened on offense in this game. It sure wasn't Brock's fault. They've all said that. And I agree. It wasn't Brock's fault. So what was the deal? Was it 100% the offensive line's fault? I don't think so. I think it was bigger than that.
I think what happened on those drives in the third quarter is Kyle sees 2nd and long as a passing down. And I think he should have run the ball on 2nd and 10 and 2nd and 15. I really do.
I agree. He also sees 3rd and short as a passing down. Dude, you have Christian McCaffrey. You're in 4-down range. You can absolutely run on 3rd and 4 at the end of the fourth quarter and at the end of the overtime. Like, what's wrong with that? Because you know what? The Chiefs don't want you to. They really don't want you to hand off to Christian McCaffrey on 3rd and 4. They don't.
Well, not only that, but at the 2-minute warning, you throw an incomplete pass, you stop the clock. If you run it, you either run time off the clock or you force the Chiefs to use one of their 2 timeouts.
Thank you. Why did you stop the clock on your?
I really
It's
thought
like,
they
oh, our
should have run
protection
it.
didn't hold up. At what point in this game did your protection hold up? How many free rushes did you give up? And you're like, oh man, I'm so surprised that on the critical third down of the game, we gave up a free rusher. Like that was the theme of the game. You can't block this team. Run the damn ball.
I thought they should have run it on the third down before or right at the 2-minute warning, and they should have run it on 3rd and 4 in overtime. That was my
And
big
they'll have another
takeaway.
chance next year to ride Christian McCaffrey to the Super Bowl. But if he gets hurt and like running backs eventually do and breaks down, then you'll feel really, really bad. It's the same thing that happened with the Niners in the Super Bowl with Frank Gore. It's like, man, you had it. He was you were there. You had Frank Gore in his prime. What were you doing? And that was your last opportunity to do that with him. Over.
Tired seeing Super Bowl drives die at the 5-yard line. Damn it!
These geniuses just won't give the ball to their running back. It's been happening for years, Rob.
49. Don't remind me. 49ers don't need a top 5 wide receiver. They need a big possession route running wide receiver that's willing to block and get less targets. The system doesn't call for a superstar wide receiver, but they can change the system. You know, Kyle always talks about using the players you have and designing the best system you have for those players.
What I would say is the Niners don't need a wide back. They need, but like I think they could literally replace Debo Samuel with Jawan Jennings. Debo Samuel went down for parts of this game with a hand. Jawan played like a starter. He plays like an old school flanker who goes over the middle, possession receiver. You could get someone else to be a freaking gadget guy. And those gadget plays aren't really doing much for you anymore. And you have the best gadget guy in the league and you're not getting anything out of him. So forget it. You don't need that anymore. That's training wheels offense for when you have Jimmy Garoppolo and you can't do that much. Now you have a really good quarterback and the best running back. Now you don't need that anymore.
It's a fair argument.
I think Debo's got to go. Sorry.
Citybird. Kyle is Eagles era Andy Reid, similar stuff. Yeah, I just hope we don't have to wait another 16 years for Kyle to get his first Super Bowl. Andy Reid didn't get his first ring until he was 60. Kyle is 44. So let's please.
They're different. They're way different. I don't just because Andy Reid had a certain arc doesn't mean Kyle Shanahan's following that.
I feel like Andy listens to his players more. Andy's open to feedback more. Kyle thinks that he's done everything right. That's the biggest issue, is that Kyle still thinks that he did everything right. And that he just hasn't. He hasn't done it.
How do you change if you think you've done everything right?
You don't.
You don't. And if you're the kind of person who can't ever, and do you know people like this in your life who it's never their fault, ever? You approach them with something and you expect them to be like, yeah, that one was on me, obviously. You know, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. Doesn't mean that I'm a mess up, but I'm taking that. Do you know people who will never, ever, ever do that? I don't rock with people like that. Like people like that, tough to deal with. They're tough to deal with people who are just never, ever at fault. Okay, so now I have to fall on the sword every single time.
Did you see Travis Kelce on his podcast today?
No.
They were talking about the overtime decision. And Travis Kelce is literally laughing at Kyle Shanahan. He says, you know, the benefit of getting the ball second in overtime is that you get the ball second and you know what you need. Mm-hmm. That's an advantage for that team. Mm-hmm. And you just gave it to us. I tweeted it out at Stats on Fire. You can go look at it. Not now. This is our time. But you can go look at it. He was laughing. The Chiefs loved that Kyle took the ball first. That's exactly what they wanted Kyle Shanahan to do. And the fact that he pointed to the analytics of it, and I think it matched up, it's absurd. It is absurd that he took the ball first in overtime.
Doesn't it seem like Kyle Shanahan made a decision based on God knows what, and then tried to sort of create an explanation after the fact? And it kept changing. At first, it was like, well, we didn't want Patrick Mahomes to get the ball back. Well, he is going to get the ball back. The rules are different. No. We wanted to get the ball third in case we both scored because we wanted to finish the game. Okay. No. Our defense was tired. Our defense was actually a little exhausted, and it had just been on the field for an 11-play drive. So we wanted to, all right, man, well, you get back to me when you know why you did what you did. But clearly it seems like it was the wrong thing to do.
Even after the game, Kyle was specifically asked, did you choose the ball first because you wanted to give your defense a rest? And he said no.
No, he was asked twice. That was right there.
Then yesterday in the press conference, he kind of brought it up, and then Lynch specifically said, "Oh, also our defense was really tired." It's like, no, dude, you had your chance. You failed.
Also, someone just put it in the chat. It's true. Kyle said he wanted to get the ball third. That wouldn't have worked because the Chiefs were going to go for 2.
Of course. And what? Because why would you kick the ball if you're Andy Reid? Why are you going to give the ball back to Kyle Shanahan when you could say, "I've got Patrick Mahomes. We're 2 yards away.
Yeah.
Let's go."
Do we have a better chance of converting a 2-point conversion or holding or not even giving up a field goal to the 49ers?
Right. Exactly.
I'll trust Pat. I'm going to put this in the game of the hands of Patrick Mahomes on my defense. Yes.
And the fact
So
that Kyle,
it took him days to figure out the right alibi. These guys were under interrogation, and it took them days to figure out the right alibi. And I'm sorry, it's clear they didn't know what the hell. They were not prepared. I don't think anyone can sit here and be like, yeah, the Niners clearly knew what they were doing in the overtime. Like, no, they didn't know.
They didn't
know. And that's why they lost the Super Bowl. So everyone's like, man, this one hurts way more. Brandon Aiyuk couldn't freaking talk. Kyle's like, well, it hurts more because we lost in the overtime. No. It hurts more because you didn't understand how to navigate playoff overtime. That's why, let's be real clear about this. That's why it hurts. Because you, the head coach, didn't really know the rules or have your team prepared for overtime in the Super Bowl, and you should have won. And if they were prepared, those players think they would have won. And they probably would have.
I mean,
you should have went for the touchdown on third and four, going forward on 4th and 4, because if you don't get it, then again the Chiefs, whatever. You should have went for
the Chiefs touchdown. Are 90 whatever yards away, or they're at the 9-yard line, so 91 yards away. But you're not. If you're already planning on the third possession, you've already planned on not stopping the Chiefs anyway. So why wouldn't you go? None of it makes sense. It's just a stupid argument by Kyle. Jalid says we could have done everything right. We still would have lost it. It was predestined to lose. You need an elite quarterback to win it. We're fooling ourselves again with Brock. It wasn't predestined, though. That's the thing. Even with all the weird crap, and the Chiefs got a lot of lucky bounces. There were 7 fumbles in the game. The Chiefs got 6 of them back. Like, a lot of bounces went the Chiefs' way. But even with all that,
don't let Kyle off the hook. It wasn't predestined.
Yes.
No, they didn't do everything right. Kyle blew it. The players know it. And that's why this one's going to be so hard to sit with. They did everything right. They did everything right.
The players didn't do everything right. I mean, no, it was both, but they still could have won it even with those mistakes.
True. I mean, of course, Ray made a mistake and Burford made a mistake, but like the stars of the team, Purdy did everything right. Aiyuk did everything right. Samuel didn't show up, but like Kittle did. I mean, he converted that he didn't get opportunities. Bosa showed up. Armstead showed up. Everyone was there. And Kyle did a Kyle. It's like Dak pulled a Dak. It's like, that's disheartening because they can't coach him. They can't. What are they going to do? I mean, who's coaching Kyle to not make that? I don't know.
What's going on over there? Is there an umbrella or something that's about to fall on you?
Yeah, it's an umbrella. I'm trying to block out the sun so I get a little less, but then there's wind. But it's all right. I'm holding it down.
All right. We have a bunch of super chats, and we're getting to the end of the show. Crazy Rod 16. Jed York's stock option group is not so great. They remind me of the 90s Bills team that always lose in the Super Bowl.
He really shouldn't have said a word before the Super Bowl, man. That was a mistake.
I agree. Chris Tallarico, what do you do after Hoodie if you get him? Who cares? Shanny ain't the guy. It doesn't matter who you do get if you're the guy. If the guy
that
you
was
have
the same argument to not get Tom Brady. Like, okay, but he's 40 something, and what do you do after you win the Super Bowl? Like, I love that question. We'll worry about it then, but what do you do after you win the Super Bowl? Great question. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee that you win the Super Bowl with Belichick, though.
No, it's not.
Andre Garibay says Kyle needs to hit in the draft. Having good players on cheap contracts is a must. And the Niners just lucky Purdy doesn't make much. O-line, edge, defensive back, wide receiver are all needs. Yeah, this draft
on Drake Jackson?
I think they gave up on Drake Jackson.
Sorry, Drake.
West Bay Niners talk. Top priority this offseason is work on the offensive line. I think they will, but they should have done it last year.
Did they just have this epiphany? That's amazing. The offensive line is important. It blocks for the quarterback.
Maybe we shouldn't have guys that we cut earlier suddenly become unquestioned starters. I'm just, throwing it out there. Chris Tallarico, problem isn't the core of this team. The problem is the coach. That is the change that needs to be made. Until then, they won't win a Super Bowl.
Can I just say something real quick, though? Like, one offensive lineman who had a really bad game that people won't talk about, Trent Williams. He didn't play well at all. He was getting knocked back by corners on running play. He was whiffing on blocks. He didn't play well. But I think the thing about the offensive line, to me, is that was the issue really them getting beaten, physically beaten, or the protection schemes not working? It seemed like it was more of a schematic thing than like a a talent thing, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Yeah.
it was more from the neck up than the neck down, for sure.
Yeah.
Generic name. We all agree Kyle raises the floor of the quarterbacks, but we refuse to acknowledge that it has a cost. He also lowers the ceiling to below that of the elites. I don't necessarily agree.
What I don't like about Kyle is it seems like he turns his quarterbacks into robots. Like in this game, you had Brock Purdy just dropping back a lot. Like, can you get him moving, please? Can you get him on the run? He's so good throwing left, throwing right when he's outside the pocket. In the pocket, he tends to get his passes knocked down a little bit. You know why? Because he's my height. And that's okay. But come on, Kyle. Like, he's not Tom Brady. I know you want to have Peyton Manning as your quarterback. He's not Peyton Manning. Can you get him on the run a little bit, please? Do what works for him, not works for you.
I thought the Chiefs did a good job on a couple of those play action bootlegs of not taking the bait, and they were able to get pressure on Brock. There was one play where Brock had to just chuck it to Jawan Jennings, who lost like 8 yards. So that was a credit to the Chiefs.
True.
The Chiefs were on it, man. They outcoached Kyle.
Team.
The Gold Rush 561. Wilkes needs another year. D'Amico and Saleh are 0-3 against the Chiefs going back to 2018. Saleh may be the defensive coordinator after next year once he gets fired from the Jets. Who knows? Chris Groves, because that's happening. I'm now doubting we'll win with Kyle. End of the regulation around the 2-minute warning. Run the ball every play. You can't tell me Christian McCaffrey / Eli Mitchell can't pick up the yardage. Mahomes can't beat us if he's not on the field. That's the other part of this, Grant. When you're playing against Mahomes and Brady, the only advantages you have, the only thing that those guys can't overcome are the rules of the game. Number one, Patrick Mahomes can't beat you if your offense is on the field because the rules of the game do not allow it. He must stay on the sidelines. And the fact that the Chiefs didn't have all their timeouts. Like, you had to convert that third down. Trent Williams said it in the huddle. If we convert this, we can milk this clock down. So they knew. I really wish they ran it there.
You know who the Niners' most efficient running back was in the Super Bowl?
Kyle Juszczyk?
Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell.
At least Elijah Mitchell will be fresh next year.
To me, it's like every time he gets to the Super Bowl or a big game, it always feels like he doesn't run the ball enough. Like, that's your identity. You have these incredible running backs, multiple, and you lose because you couldn't figure out pass protection. Like, yeah, okay, great. I don't know what to tell you, man. It seems like you're really good at running the ball. Passing is an adventure for you for a lot of reasons, and that's how you lose. Okay. Better luck next year.
Master any craft. Debo's hurt. His route running is trash. Keep BA. Fish and Chips says Kyle bleeping hates going off scheme. Players are scared too. We the faithful. Thanks for the super chat. That's a lot of money. Nothing is going to change. No one is going anywhere. They will be back in the playoffs next year and maybe a Super Bowl. Improve on the right side of the O-line and at nickel. Also, I see them trying to bring back Aziz. You're going to have to replace Greenlaw because he's not going to be back. I think he's going to miss all the next year. First of all, injury happened in the Super Bowl. Second of all, it's an Achilles. Like, I think this is a Navarro Bowman situation where he's never going to be the same again, unfortunately.
Well, I hope not.
I hope not, but
for him. I mean, it's been 10 years. Hopefully medical technology has improved. Rooting for Dre Greenlaw. Like him a lot.
Loves Gary Greenlaw. Underrated player. Fish and Chip says
Kyle has through Achilles tendonitis too. It's like he put that. It wasn't totally random. He knew that he was risking that, and he did it anyway. So another guy who deserves. Man, he's made some huge freaking plays for this franchise.
Massive. Yep. Oof. Underrated player. Fish and Chips. Kyle has an OC. He's called Dad. That's funny, and it's probably true. Gregorius Greg says,
put him on the freaking sideline, Mike. We need you.
Can we finally stop saying Kyle's an offensive genius, please, folks? Can we hire his dad? He's a better head coach. No, like two things can be true. Kyle can be an offensive genius and not win a Super Bowl. Like, both of those things can be true.
I don't think you can get the genius tag until you win a Super Bowl. He could be a lot of things, but I'm not going to use the G word with him.
Then why does the whole league run his system?
I'm not using the G word. I'm reserving genius. He has a great system. He's very clever. He's very smart. Is he a genius? When he wins a Super Bowl, he can be a genius. Not until you win. I'm sorry, you can't just throw the word genius around all the time. No. It has to mean something, Rob.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Chris Tallarico, gotta love Kyle. Get CMC to not run him. Well, Christian McCaffrey did have 30 touches in the game. Let's just acknowledge that. Trade up to number 3 to draft a quarterback and not play him. Have a running back getting 6 yards per carry sitting on the bench. 2019 Super Bowl. Don't even have Deebo on the field in the second half. Genius. The Kyle criticism is strong today, and I understand it because there's plenty there to criticize. Scott 49, the Deebo
because it's hard to, I mean, you can't just blame it all on, you can't just say like, hey, okay, well, if we replace Darrell Luter Jr., Spencer Burford, and Ray McLeod, we'll be good. Like, no, obviously not.
Right.
Obviously not. So it's a dark time. I mean, 4 years ago, you could say, all right, well, it's Jimmy's fault. Or you could say, hey, Nick Bosa got held. We should have won. You can't do that this year.
Although
you can't do that this year.
Nick Bosa did get held, but that's neither here nor there. Matt McCune says Deebo 3 playoff games, 141 all-purpose yards, 0 touchdown. Well, that's not true. He had touchdown. Oh, you're saying 3 playoff games this year. Sorry, I thought you were talking about bigger. West Bay Niner Talk says trade Deebo, also draft Malachi Corley. He's literally another Deebo. I mean, the whole league's been looking for another Deebo, and they haven't found him yet. So let's not be too quick to put that label on people. Chance 99, please don't blow off the question. In your honest opinion, what will it take for Jed to move on from Kyle? Stop making the playoffs and going to NFC Championship games.
Let's talk about finding the next Deebo real quick. Going back to the next Deebo. You don't need to find – first, Deebo isn't Deebo anymore. He's not a wide back. He is not a wide back anymore. He's a wide receiver who catches screens. That's what he does. And you know who else does that? Rashee Rice for the freaking Chiefs. Compare their numbers just in the same numbers as receivers. You can find a guy who catches screens and gets yards after the catch. You can find that guy in round 2, round 3. You can do it.
I found
and you're
Deebo
not trying to find another wide back because you have a guy named Christian McCaffrey. You don't need a freaking wide receiver to play running back anymore. That's outdated.
Crazy stats. After Greenlaw went down, Burke had 9 targets, 9 catches allowed, 1 touchdown, 134.7 passer rating when targeted. Rest up Greenlaw. Yeah, I'm not going to kill Oren Burks. Like he did the best he could. He's a backup linebacker, but the Chiefs rightly exploited it. There's that audio from inside the NFL where Mahomes looks over and says, hey, 57 just got hurt over there. They knew, which how could you not? Analytics say a 2-point conversion is about 50%. Marching down the field to score is 40%. So what was Kyle saying about getting it last is based on analytics. Kyle's explanation for that whole thing is bogus. So don't even waste your time thinking about it because it's dumb. William Carter, thanks for the super chat. Aaron A. Trade Kittle instead. He's slow, unathletic, and not spry. I would be fine with them trading anybody at this point, to be honest with you.
I said they should trade Kittle 2 years ago. So, I mean, yeah.
I said
I just don't think you're going to get much for him at this point.
I said Kittle wasn't going to finish his contract, and he got all mad at me. Fish and Chip says BP won the other playoff games by going off scheme. I mean, I don't think scrambling is necessarily off scheme, but okay. Nobody went off scheme in the Super Bowl. They're scared of Kyle Shanahan. Well, you can't say that they weren't scared in the other playoff games, but they were scared in the Super Bowl. I don't buy that.
I will say, though, that his scrambles against the Lions were the difference in the game, and Mahomes' runs in the Super Bowl were huge. So, yeah, Brock, and afterward yesterday, Brock said he wants to work on his mobility. Like, yeah, good for you.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah, 2 things he wants to
work on.
Because
last year he was like, I want to work on my pocket passing. Like, nah, work on your mobility, baby.
Arm strength and mobility were the 2 things he said he wants to work on. That'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Jay Garza, YouTube channel member, says, what do teams always say at the end of the game? Don't let Mahomes have the ball last. Same is true in overtime of the Super Bowl. Kyle gonna Kyle. That's what I said. That's why it was dumb. Mike Drops with Monza. What's up, Mike Drops? Do you see a situation in which Kyle walks? No, I don't see that. He's not walking away from all that money.
No.
Matt McCune. They will move on from Wilkes and say they're going in a different direction without saying it. He will be the unspoken excuse why we lost, and the 49ers will
I can see that. I think there's a 50% chance that happens.
Yep.
50%. Yep.
Yes.
They'll phrase it. So they may be trying to figure out how to phrase it right now. Right?
Mutual parting.
Yep.
Mutual parting.
Yep.
Sarah Natty says, Kyle Shanahan is a robot. Players follow orders like a robot. No, because Ray McLeod didn't follow orders when he should have fallen on the punt and didn't because he tried to pick it up. Spencer Burford didn't follow orders when he said he was playing on instinct. So you can't say that about all the players.
He is a little robotic, though, a little late to react in the moment. Again, if you've seen Grandma's Boy and you know what I'm talking about, he always has reminded me of JP. And if the Niners if there ever is a Brock Purdy movie, I think the guy who played JP should play Kyle Shanahan. Although a lot of people feel that the guy from freaking
Spider-Man.
No, the other one, Succession, the oldest son in Succession, Jeremy Strong, he would be really good too. Anyway,
never saw it. Mike Drops with Monza. Debo can't be traded. High contracts, penalty is too high. Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier. It's complicated. Kev,
he's expensive one way or another.
True. The window is closed. Only NFC tough. Lions up next. I wouldn't say the window is closed when your quarterback's 24. It's tougher, but it's not closed. Sucker free. Grant, how do you feel about Eric Bieniemy becoming the head coach and Ron Rivera defensive coordinator? What?
No. Didn't they just have that pairing in Washington? I'm good. They can bring in Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator. That'd be kind of interesting.
Mike drops with Monza. Belichick Bieniemy sounds better than Kyle Revenge 3. The revenge tour, the revenge thing is over. Like, no. Fish and chips. We blame Kyle because it's a pattern of brain farts. At this point, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
William Carter. Kyle's an incompetent both.
Coach. I don't know.
The only thing that he's a genius about is losing the big games. That's can I just touch on that really quick?
No.
The idea that Kyle Shanahan can't win big games is flat out incorrect.
He said the big game, not some big games, a big game. The big game.
If you're talking about Super Bowls, that criticism is fair. But Dave also won a lot of big games. Like, he's 8-4 in the playoffs in his career. I saw him go down 17-0 on the road in week 18 of the regular season against the Rams and come back and win. I saw them go into Seattle in 2019, needing to win to get the number 1 seed, and they won that game. So he has won big games. He hasn't won the biggest game, but come on, let's not.
Hey, well, when he gets inducted in the Hall of Fame, you got to put that in your speech when you write it for him. He didn't win the biggest games, but he won some big games, and like a really long explanation.
Yeah, because there's nobody in the Hall of Fame that doesn't have a Super Bowl ring.
Hey, right? Man, I still think it's so dumb that Marv Levy got inducted to the Hall of Fame. Like, for what? For what?
What do you mean, for what? He went to 4 straight Super Bowls.
Did he win any of them?
So?
No.
See, that's...
No. You put Marv Levy in the Hall of Fame and not 100%. George Seifert? Get the hell out of here.
They should both be in the Hall of Fame. I agree.
Okay, but if we're picking one, I'm picking the champion. The 5-time champion, not the 0-time champion who exceeded expectations in Buffalo. Cool. I mean,
you don't have
to go be in the Buffalo Hall of Fame.
How dare you disrespect Marv Levy on this program? How long?
He's Jewish too. Why did I even say that? Shout out to Jews everywhere.
How long is Kyle's leash right now? I think his leash is as long as it's ever been. He just got a new contract.
Yeah, it's it's 6 years long. 6 years.
Oh my God, the super chats keep rolling in here. Sarah Natty says, designing individual great plays is genius-like. Orchestrating plays in a winning symphony is genius. Coaches copy his schemes, not his
There
decisions.
You go.
Well, no one said he's a genius decision maker. Clearly he's not. But
I like it.
As a play caller, he is. Like, he is. Like,
nope.
We can acknowledge both.
No.
It doesn't have to be binary.
No. I'm not throwing the G word around. That's my personal preference.
West Bay Niner talk. Do you think the Niners will find a right tackle in free agency or do it through the draft?
I think they like Colton Kivitz.
Mike drops with Monza. Kyle's playoff record overrated. NFC has been trash for 4 years. Well, then why hasn't anybody how come no one else has duplicated it?
Well, the Niners are the best team in the NFC, but every time they faced a good AFC team this year, they lost.
Yeah, but we're talking about the NFC. If the NFC is such trash, why can't anybody else?
That's like being the best team in the Big 12. Is it really an accomplishment?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then fly that NFC championship banner proudly. Do it, because that's all you are. That's all you are.
Right now, yeah.
That's true. Fly it. Put it up there. Have a whole ceremony. We almost did it. We're pretty close to our goal.
I got 2 more of these. Chris says, I saw Kyle up 10 in many games and lose them. No, he actually doesn't lose that many games when he's up. If you go back,
only the Super Bowls. I'm sorry.
Yeah, kind of. That's the sad part about it, and only against the GOAT, unfortunately. Fish and Chip says, Kyle Shanahan playoff 6-0 the first 2 rounds, 2-4 the last 2 games.
God, why am I laughing at this dude's misery right now? I'm sorry. I'm just
Kyle hasn't made. Last games. I see what you're saying. 2-4 the last. Yeah, like obviously he hasn't. Like, we're doing this thing that we do when people don't win championships, where we're saying, well, you didn't win the championship, so nothing else you've done has been impressive or good in any way.
It's not just that he doesn't win the championship, though, Rob. It's that he finds ways to blow double-digit leads every time, 3 times in a row. Like, wow. It's hilarious. And it's like, you're sitting there, he gets a double-digit lead in the second quarter, and you're like, he's not going to do it again. He's not going to do it again. And this time he does it because he didn't know the rules. He found a new way.
No,
it's incredible.
He knew the rules.
Incredible. Wow. It's actually kind of funny.
He knew the
I gotta
rules.
say, I don't root against. I'm kicking my feet up. I don't root against Kyle Shanahan per se, but this whole narrative, this whole storyline of him being this close to greatness and not being able to like grab it is becoming funny.
Well,
I know
he's the
if you
reason.
root for the team, it's not funny at all. But it's like, dude, you're this close. How can you not get there? It's been 5 years. It's like, you remember, in like WWF where they have the King of the Ring and they have to like get up to the top of the ladder and reach the. It's like, man, you've climbed the ladder 800 times and you always can't. Like, it's funny. It's almost funny. It's like slapstick. It's almost slapstick at this point.
With
Sorry.
the 49ers, he's the reason that they haven't won it. It's him. And it's to
him.
me, it's undeniable at this point. But that also doesn't mean that nothing else he's done has been good or impressive. Those are two separate things.
I think the most impressive thing he does is his ability to get this close to winning. And now it's like no one gets closer to winning it all than him. It's like he approaches the finish line and then turns around and walks away. Every time. It's amazing. It's very impressive. Restraint.
He
just wants to keep the intrigue going. He understands there's a lot of drama. And as soon as he wins the Super Bowl, he's not as intriguing anymore. It's all about intrigue. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle's all about he's all about the content creators.
Yeah.
That's Kyle Shanahan. Thank you, everybody. There's over 1,000 people watching right now. Please like and subscribe. We're not going anywhere. Grant's going to be pumping out YouTube content all off.
I'm going to fly away.
I will be as well. Like and subscribe to both the Gold Standard and Grant Cohn's YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. If you click the little bell, you'll get notified every single time we go live. And of course, rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your pods. Grant, it was a pleasure to talk to you. It was a pleasure to meet you. And we'll talk next week.